The Cold War, a decades-long geopolitical standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union and their respective allies, was characterized not by direct large-scale conflict, but by a pervasive threat of nuclear annihilation. Following the Allied victory in World War II, the wartime alliance between the US, Britain, and the Soviet Union rapidly disintegrated, replaced by deep suspicion and ideological conflict fueled by fundamentally different socio-economic systems, capitalism versus communism. The development of nuclear weapons by the United States in 1945, culminating in the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, fundamentally altered the landscape of international relations, introducing a destructive capability unlike anything previously known. The Soviet Union, determined not to be left behind, rapidly pursued its own nuclear program, detonating its first atomic bomb in 1949, effectively ending the American nuclear monopoly and ushering in the nuclear arms race. This arms race wasn't simply about accumulating weapons, it was about achieving mutually assured destruction, MAD. A doctrine positing that the threat of devastating retaliation would prevent either side from launching a first strike. The early years of the Cold War saw a series of escalating crises that brought the world perilously close to nuclear war, including the Berlin blockade, 1948-1949, the Korean War, 1951-1953, and the First Taiwan Strait Crisis, 1958. The Berlin blockade, initiated by the Soviet Union to prevent Western access to West Berlin, was met by the Allied Berlin airlift, a massive logistical undertaking that demonstrated Western resolve, but also underscored the volatile nature of the situation. The Korean War, a proxy conflict fought between Communist North Korea, supported by China and the Soviet Union, and South Korea, backed by the United States and the United Nations, highlighted the dangers of ideological clashes and the potential for escalation. The First Taiwan Strait Crisis saw tensions rise between the People's Republic of China and Taiwan, with the United States threatening intervention to protect Taiwan from communist invasion, further exacerbating Cold War anxieties. However, the Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962 remains the closest the world has ever come to full-scale nuclear war, a 13-day standoff that brought humanity to the brink of annihilation. In the summer of 1962, the Soviet Union began secretly deploying nuclear missiles to Cuba, just 90 miles from the coast of Florida, a move that fundamentally altered the strategic balance of power and posed an unacceptable threat to the United States. Kennedy opted for a naval quarantine of Cuba, a less aggressive term than blockade, to prevent further Soviet shipments of offensive weapons, a move that risked direct confrontation with Soviet ships and potential escalation to nuclear war. The world held its breath as Soviet ships approached the quarantine line, with the possibility of a direct clash at sea looming large, an event that could easily have triggered a full-scale nuclear exchange. Khrushchev initially demanded the removal of American Jupiter missiles from Turkey in exchange for the removal of Soviet missiles from Cuba, a proposal that Kennedy initially resisted, fearing it would appear as if he was caving to Soviet pressure. However, through back-channel negotiations, a secret agreement was reached where the United States agreed to remove the Jupiter missiles from Turkey at a later date in exchange for the immediate removal of Soviet missiles from Cuba. On October 28, 1962, Khrushchev announced the withdrawal of Soviet missiles from Cuba, averting a nuclear war. But the crisis left a lasting impact on Cold War relations and highlighted the fragility of peace. The Cuban Missile Crisis led to the establishment of the hotline between Washington and Moscow, a direct communication link designed to prevent accidental war due to miscalculation or misunderstanding. Following the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Cold War entered a period of detente, a relaxation of tensions characterized by arms control negotiations, increased trade, and cultural exchange. The Strategic Arms Limitation talks, SALT I and SALT II, led to agreements limiting the production of strategic nuclear weapons, a significant step towards reducing the arms race and promoting stability. However, Detente was not without its challenges, and tensions resurfaced in the 1970s with conflicts in the Third World, such as the Vietnam War and the Arab-Israeli conflicts. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 marked the end of détente, leading to a renewed arms race and increased Cold War hostility. The Reagan administration adopted a more confrontational stance towards the Soviet Union, increasing military spending and deploying Pershing II missiles in Europe. The Strategic Defense Initiative, SDE, dubbed Star Wars, proposed a space-based missile defense system designed to intercept and destroy Soviet nuclear missiles, raising fears of a new arms race in space. The Chernobyl disaster in 1986 highlighted the dangers of nuclear technology and raised concerns about the safety of Soviet nuclear power plants. The late 1980s witnessed a period of dramatic political and economic change in the Soviet Union under Mikhail Gorbachev, with the introduction of reforms such as perestroika and glasnost. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 symbolized the end of the Cold War and the collapse of communist regimes in Eastern Europe. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 marked the end of the Cold War and the emergence of the United States as the sole superpower. Despite the end of the Cold War, the threat of nuclear proliferation remains a significant concern, with several countries possessing nuclear weapons and the potential for terrorist groups to acquire them. The Cold War left a lasting legacy of mistrust and suspicion, shaping international relations for decades to come. Numerous near misses throughout the Cold War, often declassified decades later, reveal how close the world came to nuclear annihilation due to technical malfunctions, miscalculations, and human error. The 1983 Soviet nuclear false alarm incident, triggered by a software glitch and the Soviet officers' quick thinking, demonstrated the vulnerability of early warning systems and the potential for accidental war. Incidents involving malfunctioning nuclear missiles, such as the 1961 Goldsboro B-52 crash, revealed how close the world came to accidental nuclear detonations on American soil. The downing of Korean Airlines Flight 7 in 1983 by a Soviet fighter jet brought the world to the brink of war, as the United States considered retaliation against Soviet military targets. The risk of escalation from proxy wars, such as the Vietnam War and the conflicts in Korea and Afghanistan, constantly threatened to widen the Cold War into a full-scale nuclear conflict. The development of increasingly sophisticated nuclear weapons, such as hydrogen bombs and intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, exponentially increased the destructive potential of nuclear war. The doctrine of mutually assured destruction, MAD, while intended to deter nuclear war, has created a precarious situation where any miscalculation or escalation could lead to catastrophic consequences. The Cold War serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of ideological conflict, the importance of diplomacy, and the need for arms control to prevent nuclear annihilation. The lessons learned from the Cold War remain relevant today as the world faces new challenges to international security, including the rise of new nuclear powers and the threat of terrorism.